All right, teammates. We are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know how we get down here. You already hit the play button. You're used to hitting the play button at this point, and you know we are here to serve you, whether it's myself as doing a solo episode or if I'm bringing on a guest. We're here to make sure you understand that whatever you may be going through in life, whatever challenges you may be facing, you are not going through it alone. You're not. That's why it's the number one podcast on innovative teamwork. It's creating that element to where whatever is happening that's difficult in your life right now, we're here to help you through the moment. So I have the perfect person again for I know you guys are used to hearing me say that, but it's definitely what this show is attracting and what this show is all about. But Mr. Carey Sumner is the founder of Cresso Consulting, and he built it really, I mean, really made for what the Move Swiftly podcast is all about in regards to starting something from the ground up and then seeing it through and just kind of being in the business of serving clients. So all that being said, Carey, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here. Excited to be with you today.
Yeah, likewise, man. And I was reading through all your stuff. I was listening to you on, and for the regular listeners, you guys know this, but to my new timers, you guys already know, or to my new timers, I'll tell you now, I do my research on people. I don't just bring any bullshit on the show. I make sure I listen to them and I make sure I read all their bios and everything because I don't want to bring no nonsense on here. And, you started out, I believe you said 15 years old, doing like a lawn business, and then you
Yeah.
created something, We Be Moving Now. As someone I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, my dad would make me cut the grass, and that's work that I actually respect and stuff like that. Let's kind of go back to your teenage years a little bit, and walk us through a little bit about your background, how you grew up, and then how you're able to kind of turn this thing into an actual business.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, some people they have that mantra of, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, start things, but I never thought of myself that way. I just kind of always did things and kind of looking back now, I look back and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm entrepreneurial, right?
Now, this
Uh,
was in Jacksonville.
no, this was Brevard County, so Cocoa Beach
Oh,
area.
so you're still in Florida.
Yep, still Central Florida, East Coast. But yeah, so I just knew I needed money to buy a new surfboard. And I had a neighbor who I could cut their yard. And so that then turned into I told someone, and then someone was like, oh, well, do my yard. And then I had a friend, and the same thing was happening to him. So we were like, well, let's just do it together. And after we mow a couple yards and make some cash, we can go surfing together because that's what we were going to do anyway.
Mhm.
So then it just kind of grew to where we're like 16 doing 20 yards a week and making more money than what we knew what to do with as 16-year-olds, right?
So
So
the thing
for
is,
us,
I hate to cut you off there, but I
yeah,
think you're touching on something that's really important for us to mention. When you look back and you look at the technological advances that the world has now, and the
sure.
teenagers, I mean, the research is crazy where they're spending hours on laptops and iPads and they're in the house. What's your thoughts on, teaching kids, hey, get out there, meet people, get out there, do stuff outside. Don't just look
Yeah.
behind your phone and your screen and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, sure, you need the critical people skills to make that
Yeah,
happen,
yeah.
right? Like it was my willingness to engage my neighbors and
Mhm.
willingness to engage some old lady at my church and just ask, right? That's kind of
Exactly.
like sales 101, like you
Sure.
gotta ask someone eventually.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we have to have that engagement. It's actually, I'm where we're sitting right now. I'm with one of my clients today. She's giving a talk tonight specifically on what you just asked on how do we actually disconnect our kids from this, and how as parents today you spend way more time parenting your kids.
Yeah.
It feels like even less impact, and it's because of the devices that they're holding on to. So
You can't
definitely
make
getting
this
in.
stuff up, folks. I mean, the man is there on the job doing a podcast interview with one of his clients. Again, this is stuff I don't plan. It just happens, man. So appreciate
uh,
you. I have to shout you out again. Appreciate you taking the time to do
yeah,
that while you're obviously tending to your clients and stuff like that. That's
for
awesome.
sure, for sure.
All right, so you're going about doing this business, and I believe you had mentioned it didn't become a business until you actually spent some time, I guess, through school and working certain jobs and stuff
Sure.
like that. Can you walk us through those years in which you were maybe working a job that you didn't like and how you were able to turn it into something that became feasible?
Yeah, absolutely. I always kind of looked at every job as it's building something into me, right? And I have the opportunity for that. Even jobs that may have been in places I didn't like, or with bosses that maybe were not the easiest,
Right.
there's always something to gain from there, right? So I could have taken a victim mentality, but what I chose to do is just say, okay, what am I going to learn from this?
Hmm.
And how's that going to pack in? And so for me, it really was learning how to deal with people. So I do a lot of team development now,
Hmm.
working with executive teams, working with departmental teams, helping them sort out their communication, how they work together, or building a system. So, how are we going to actually do X? A lot of people either have really good ideas or are really good at implementing something, but I find creating the plan to get the idea from idea to implementation is a struggle for people. And that was just something, for some reason, I was good at it.
Hmm.
And being able to say, okay, well, here are the 10 steps we have to take to do this. Who's going to take them and when are they going to do it
Hmm.
was natural for me. So I just got better and better at that because more people would say, hey, you're good at this. Will you do it for us? And
Hmm.
so the more we do it, the better we get at it.
Right.
And that kind of happened. So for my business as it developed, what I really did was say, okay, what is it that A, I'm actually good at,
Hmm.
and B, I love to do? And I said, all right, well, that's what I'm going to go do and offer to people. So that's kind of how the business developed, was just that sense of leaning into those gifts and the things where I've been successful.
Right. So there was a lot you said there that I want to make sure doesn't get brushed over because initially you actually kind of hit a trigger when you said you had some asshole bosses and worked for some bosses that were just terrible. And I've had my fair share of those. But like you, as I look back on it, I learned so much from each one
Oh,
of them because it's nothing personal with them. They just were in situations that they couldn't do certain things. They couldn't do things from a self-development standpoint. Like actually, I'll give you an example. I just wrote an article titled "Be the Change" because as a teacher, I wasn't happy with the professional development that we were getting at a particular school. But I was like, wait, if you go to this conference, I can actually be the one that's,
yeah,
filling that gap. So can you
yeah.
just speak a little bit about some of the day-to-day that you had gone through when you're talking about having a boss that's incompetent in your eyes?
Yeah, I think much like you just said, I tried to view them as they've been they're doing the best with what they have been given,
Right,
right?
right.
And so trying to take it from that and then really just trying to say, okay, what's the objective that
Mhm.
we're all going for here?
Right.
And yeah, okay, now I'm going to do what I can to get that. And so, I can remember having a boss who was very patient with me
Mhm.
when I'm trying to charge the hill and take this
Right.
objective, and I've got a bunch of volunteers, and I'm like, oh, like, come on, get out of the way, let us go. And
Mhm.
he's slowed me down. He's like, hey, if you don't take the troops up the hill, just
Mhm.
because you take the hill doesn't mean that that's a good thing.
Right,
And
right, right. Yeah, I
so he was
understand.
like,
Right.
hey, you got to go do this. Then with some tougher bosses that I had, eventually I had to make an internal decision that
Hmm.
said, okay, is this person someone I can follow and whose vision I'm going to chase after?
Right.
And at some point, I would come to the place where I said no.
Mhm.
And I have a choice then. Am I going to be a pain in that person's behind? Or am I going to move on to what's next? Right. And so there's that sense of when we're in leadership and when we're under leadership, yeah, you want to rise up, you want to help lead, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. But at some point, you also have to say, hey, this isn't a good fit for me.
Okay.
And what's healthiest for me from a even mental health standpoint is not to stay in a bad system, but
Hmm.
to find that next system where you are going to thrive.
Yes, actually, one of my favorite Bible verses is Colossians 3:23, I believe. It says, "Do all your work unto God and not unto man." So, if you're listening in and whatever you may be going through, whether you're on the side of the employer or the employee in this situation, you have to understand your work. It's not just about you specifically. There has to be a macro picture. There has to be a bigger picture towards how you guys collaborate and communicate. Because as you just mentioned, there could be some bosses that their resources are shot and they need to make
Yeah.
sure they're wheeling people in, or there's bosses I've had that I've had to deal with them feeling threatened. They're around someone who's
Oh,
like me, competent, qualified to do their job, but is doing this for less money by choice. So now instead of them uplifting them, they're going to just kind of throw them under the bus and act like they're not doing certain things. So all this stuff gets cleared up when you do your work onto God, which could be a bigger picture for you, whatever that situation may be. And that, just saying, that kind of leads me into the next point I want to talk to you about is when you are transitioning on your own. And I heard you kind of talk a little bit about this when you were on a previous show. The nut. I remember actually when I was I was selling scouting services to parents, and they all loved it. Everything was great. But then it's like, what's the nut? The nut is the price, right? The price
yeah.
is how much it charges, and that's what turned a lot of people off. Can
Yeah.
you speak a little bit about when you're talking about your clients and how you go about that conversation of how much should you charge for your
Yeah.
services, and or are you worth it? Walk us through a little bit about how you're able to get to that point, because that's really what's going to make the business flow.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually in a conversation with someone about this right now where we're going back and forth.
Right. It's a lot.
Because for me, from a consulting standpoint, I don't charge from an hourly basis.
Hmm.
What I do is I charge based on what is the value of what the engagement to you as the business owner.
Okay.
So, especially on engagements that are going to have a direct revenue
Yes.
impact to that business, say you're going to make an extra $100,000 out of the work we do. Well, what is it worth to you as the business owner
Hmm.
if you make another $100,000?
Right.
And for everybody, that's a different number. Like some people are going to say, well, that's worth 5,000. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Find someone who will do that for 5,000.
Right. Right. Right.
For others, they're going to say, okay, that's worth 30,000 to me. And I'll kind of decide, okay, within the scope of all the work I have, is that worth it for me to do? So it's really defining the value of the work I'm doing on what result I'm going
Got
to
it.
come out on. And that for me, one of the reasons I've trended towards that, I have always been a fast mover in
Mhm.
whatever I do. And so if I quote an hourly price to you, I'm going to finish that faster than most people.
Mhm.
I should not penalize myself
Right.
by charging you an hourly rate that I know I'm already going to go fast on.
Got it.
And so really it's about saying, okay, if we're going to save you so much money, if we're going to make you so much money, what percentage of that are you as the business owner willing to then
Pay the
give over for what that was? And also, like, how long is that money? Is it a residual? Is it I'm building a sales model for a company right now. Okay, so that model is going to last them the next 3 to 5 years. They're
Mhm.
not going to just make money off of it this year. They're going to make money off of it the next 5 years. So setting up, hey, is there a commission that you want to make off of that work that you're doing as well? For you scouting services, that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
Hey, if this kid goes on to the
Right.
NFL or NBA or whatever, right? It's like, is
Exactly.
there a percentage there eventually that you come to? So,
Right. That's actually was the kind of the way I would approach certain conversations with parents. But this was actually about 10 years before NIL. So this was
yeah,
a brand new concept to
yeah,
everyone. They didn't realize that they're actually going to be needing managers for these high school athletes. So I was ahead of the curve when it comes to that. And it was something that you actually just said that I want to touch on, because as a consultant, and what I've learned as a consultant, it's really hard to niche down. It's hard to figure out who exactly is the person that you're going to serve. So when you mentioned Gatorade or Florida, since we're in Florida, Gatorade still gets, no, Florida still gets residuals from every single Gatorade sale. So
yep,
when you're out there and you're looking for clients, and maybe you are working with a college versus a big lawn mowing business
yeah,
that does contracting work, how do you sort of navigate who you're going to be working with and, what's going to be the value that you offer and all that. Because that can be a lot. It's a lot of businesses.
Oh, yeah,
Figuring
definitely.
out who you're going to serve is a lot.
Yeah, I think one thing for me is relationship. So do we mesh well
Right.
together, right? Whether it's the CEO, COO I'm working with, who business manager, whoever it is I'm working with. Okay, do we mesh well? Is it a business that my values align with, right? And then really understanding what's the potential for impact here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so if this is hey, just drop in, come do a workshop, I'll do that. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going to prioritize an organization that I feel like, hey, I might come start with a workshop, and
Mm-hmm.
then you might have one or two people on your team who maybe just need some coaching. And
Mm-hmm.
we might do a 3 to 6 month contract where I'd set up some coaching, we
Mm-hmm.
read a couple books, listen to a couple podcasts together, and
Mm-hmm.
really help them move along in their journey. And so some of that's also dependent upon where I am in business cycle and what my openness and my schedule is, right? If I've got a month that I'm just so full, I'm gonna be less likely to take that engagement.
Mm-hmm.
But if I've got a month that I know, like July's classic
Mm-hmm.
slow month from a consulting standpoint. Why? Everyone's at the beach.
No
No one
one
wants
wants to work.
or
I
no
know
one
exactly.
wants to work on their business in
It's
July.
actually a really depressing time over here. I'm a sports guy because NBA playoffs just ends and I
Yep,
have to wait a whole month before the NFL. So
that's right.
right now this year I had to talk a lot of politics and I didn't want to have to do that. But it's like, look,
Yeah.
I need something, man. I need some sort of
Yep.
competition, some vibes, man.
Yep.
So, when mentioning all that, you made sure I think you mentioned something that I really do want to make sure we get on the record here, which is the sales funnel. All right. So
Yeah.
many people out there, they run away from sales and that sales defense goes up. But I mean, you have been on this show, well, you're currently on the show now, but there have been multiple people that have been on this show, and we've talked about the importance of sales and how it's a force multiplier. So when you mention building a sales funnel for companies and for business owners, kind of walk us through how that works and how you're able to help people when it comes to the sales element of it.
Yeah, sure. So this is really defining the market. What are we kind of going after? Then defining what product and really developing the product that we have that we're trying to sell.
Right.
Once we've developed the product, then we can really narrow in on who our target markets are,
Mhm.
who our target audience is, so that we can make some profiles of people or companies that we're looking at. So right now I'm working with a company that's basically looking to get sponsorship for some of the shows that they do,
Mhm.
right? So what product are we going to offer? Well, we're going to offer them space within the show that their business can then be known to a certain audience within a geographical region.
Mhm.
So then we price how much is that worth
Mhm.
to whoever it is we're targeting. So say we target a real estate agent,
Mhm.
if you think of the typical real estate commission coming off, if they get one commission, right? If they get one sale
Mhm.
off of them placing that ad with you, then that one sale, quite honestly, probably pays for the ad itself.
Mhm.
So we feel like, hey, you're probably going to get 3 to 5 sales off of this. So
Mhm.
being competitively priced then to where the person who's going to purchase says, oh, yeah, that's within my budget. And so knowing that, that's why you build the profiles for the target markets is, hey, this is an HVAC company. The typical replacement for an HVAC unit is $5,000 to $7,000. So if we think that we can get them 5 sales out of that, sure, they'll probably give us one back in the sales process of it. So it's building that pricing and then doing exactly what you're talking about, using a good CRM. I love HubSpot, just shout out
Right.
for what I use personally. Salesforce is great. There are others out there, but basically then you got to prospect, you got to have the conversations, make the calls, decide, are you going to pay for leads and get those leads coming in? How are you getting your name out there
Mhm.
and targeting? But I will tell you, one of the best things to do is just cold call. right? Like just find the companies that are in that niche that you're looking to serve and just start calling them and be dedicated and consistent with doing that. And then following up on those leads, make your proposal, make your sale, and then you go and have a great dinner afterwards.
Yes, and the cold calling element, I do think I'm glad you brought that up because that is so very important because nowadays there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of ways of reaching out to people in roundabout ways, but calling someone on the phone and then you follow up with email and text like that. But calling someone on the phone is very, very important because you know directly what
Yeah,
it is you need to be offering them or how it is, or even if they don't want to talk to you anymore, but you
yeah,
have to cold call. You have to do it. It's part of
yep,
this getting around that.
yeah.
All right. So when it comes to some of the, if there's a business owner that's listening in, and there's a ton of them that tune into this show, what is the sort of the result that you're able to get for them? I know it's going to be probably dependent on each
Yeah.
individual need, but what's sort of the thing that they should be taking away when it comes to if they want to reach out to you and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. So for me, Cresso Consulting is all about helping businesses and organizations increase, multiply, and thrive.
Mhm,
And I do that in three distinct lanes: team development, strategic planning, and profitability analysis.
mhm,
And so really, if you are in a company and you're saying, hey, we want to grow or we want to get better at what it is that we're doing, you're either going to do that through your people, you're going
mhm,
to do it through your process, your strategy, or you're going to do it by getting to know how your money's actually working
mhm,
uh, for you. And so that's one of the aspects, the P&L work that I do.
mhm,
There are a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with that they have great ideas. They've started an awesome business, but their accountant gives them this little P&L report at the end of every month, and they're like, "This is hieroglyphics."
mhm,
And so one of the things that's fun for me, just kind of with my business background and my MBA, is coming in for them and saying, "Okay, here's what this means. Like you're short on net income because, someone in your company spent a ton more money, or because the sales did not come in, what's going on with the leads, and you can go hunt and pack." And so
mhm.
what I really like to do for my clients is create a customized plan for them. It's
Gotcha.
not a one size fits all. I'm not going to come in and say you got to do this or this or this
Right,
without knowing anything about you as a company. I'm
right.
going to come in and listen to you, understand what are your pain points, what are your problems,
Mhm,
and then let's explore together how to create a unique solution
right.
centered around either your team, your strategic planning, or your financials
Mhm,
to actually bring that to life. Because when you own it,
right.
like when you as the business owner, when you as the CEO, COO are a part of
Mhm,
the development of that plan, you will then own it post me being there.
right.
Uh, and that's just where I would say one of the funny things about my job is if I do my job well, you don't need me
Yeah.
anymore. So I'm working myself out of a job constantly with the hope and belief that when I do that well, you're going to refer me to friends who
Exactly.
then will say, hey, Carey came and helped us. We became more profitable. Our culture got better. People like working here now. And so those things are then what lasts for you.
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite authors, Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad Poor Dad, he once said, "I don't want a job. I don't want one." That's the thing. I don't want a job. I don't want to actually have to have one. I want to make money on my own. And one of the things that I want to make sure we mention as well is how important it is as business owners that you bring people in, coaches and consultants that are not just giving you a one size fits all pitch. You know, what he just said was making sure every single owner, every single person that's interested in business has a catered to them plan. I tell the story all the time, Carrie, is that I had a friend who was a personal trainer, and he was telling me that he wants to open up his own gym, but eventually get bought out by Gold Gym because all that buyout money was going to be going to him and not have to be spread around to other trainers and treadmills and all that kind of stuff. That's his specific business plan. every single person has a specific agenda, a specific need. When you factor in what your family's going to need, when you factor in where you want to be 10, 15 years down the line, all of that is different. So when you're looking for these consultants, do your research, man, grill them, figure it out, do a lot of the things that you need to be doing, because you could be making an investment that really sets you back. Like, it puts you out of business if you're not careful. With There's a lot of them out there that'll sell you a lot of bullshit, and next thing you know, you're not seeing the results. It's your job to make sure you're vetting these people out and you have the results that you are paying for. All right, you're talking to someone that's been burned by this. This is why I'm getting so passionate when I'm telling you. I'm telling you from experience. I'm not telling you because I'm just knowing. I'm just been there. All right. So, all that being said, what would you say is kind of the next phase for you? Is it to open up your own school or have a brick and mortar? Kind of talk about what you see next for your consulting company.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, it's just continuing to serve my clients well and
Right.
scale. I do think at some point I have a couple of trusted people in my circle who I'd eventually trust with
Mhm.
certain engagements and with certain clients. And I think that would probably be those next steps, and is scaling my business
Yes.
enough to where I'd say, hey, let me train this person to do some of these engagements with me.
Yes. And how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in hearing more?
Yeah, so two easy ways: go to the website, cressoconsulting.com, Cresso consulting.com, or shoot me an email, Carey, Carey at cressoconsulting.com.
And all of that will be included in the show notes as well. So, Carey, the final thing I do to close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are 15-year-old version of you has just come into the Zoom room. He is thinking of ways to get in this surfboard. He's like thinking, man, maybe I could cut some grass and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretend that version of Carey has come into the Zoom room, and give him some words of encouragement, and we will
Yeah.
officially close.
Yeah, so I would say lean into those places that bring you life. Find those things where it's like you're thriving and you're doing well, and find the people who will encourage those within you. Find
Mhm.
the people who will challenge your rough edges and who will help you refine who you are. And really surround yourself with the right people, and they will help take you to those next levels.
Uh, Absolutely nothing to add to that, man. I'm telling you, you guys get around the right people, the right peer group. There's so many of the problems that you would have had is just not going to be there. It's so important. Get yourself around the right people. Get a coach, get a consultant, people that are pushing you forward, and you'll know, because you'll be uncomfortable talking to them, because you'll be kind of getting called out on your shit. Hey, you didn't make that cold call. Didn't make that cold call.
Uh-huh.
People
Yep.
around that, people who are around you, then you'll start to feel yourself getting better. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.